all the law allows at the moment is for a parent to, if they wish, to use a very mild smack on the bottom or a tap on the back of a hand or leg. There is no evidence that this very moderate and very limited defence has been misused to allow parents to get away with abusing their children. And the idea that it leads to escalation, that a parent who uses a very mild smack today will beat their child black and blue tomorrow, is just such an insult to millions of normal, decent parents who would never dream of doing any such thing. You might as well say that shouting at your child should be banned, because that too can sometimes escalate. It is really a ridiculous and offensive notion. We know that there are no popular calls for a ban. It may be an issue which obsesses certain activists and certain people, but the idea that the public are clamouring for us to criminalise parents who smack is far from the truth. And polling in Scotland and Wales ahead of the smacking bans there demonstrate how unwanted and unwelcome these new regimes are. 76% of Welsh adults said no to changing the law in 2017, and 74% of Scottish adults opposed a smacking ban. And I haven't seen much discussion of it in Northern Ireland. Families are the backbone of our society, and they deserve all the support we can give them. The reasonable chastisement defence is, by definition, a reasonable law.
Essentially, this amendment would remove the legal defence of reasonable chastisement from parents who might occasionally smack their own children. Effectively, this declares that the government knows better than loving parents who could find themselves vulnerable to charges of common assault just for being parents. Also, this amendment is entirely unnecessary because it's already illegal to aim a smack at a child's head or hit a child with an object, or any smack that leads to more than the temporary reddening of skin. In other words, unreasonable punishment is already against the law, and rightly so too. The amendment states that, and I quote, "Battery of a child cannot be justified on the grounds that it constitutes reasonable punishment." And of course, battery can't be justified on the basis of reasonable punishment. But think about that use of that word battery. It conjures up horrors, doesn't it? Yep. And why was that word used in this amendment? I noticed in campaigns to ban smacking in Wales and Scotland that one of the most egregious tactics of anti-smacking lobbyists was this irresponsible conflation of smacking with gross acts of violence. This rhetorical trick is shameless and shamefully distorts intention and context. Conflating slapping with violence paints ordinary mums and dads as potential violent thugs or child abusers. It's just so insulting, and it shows a certain distrust of ordinary parents that we heard tonight, people describing smacking and beating the living daylights of children in the same sentence. Do we really believe that children should not be treated differently to adults? In the real world, parents do many things to their children that they wouldn't dream of doing to another adult. When you order a child to bed, you don't order adults to bed, do you? When you check to whether your child's bottom is clean, you wouldn't do that to an adult. Children, we do treat differently to adults, especially our own children. If you confiscate your teen's Xbox or phone, we don't consider that theft because of the context. It's common sense disciplinary action, as smacking can be, and smacking is not assault or even comparable. So, my lords, I hope you agree with me that parents are better placed to judge when and how to discipline their offspring than any number of NGOs, even if they come waving state-approved parenting manuals full of best practice checklists and count to 10. And how does it protect children if the law undermines parental authority? If families are ripped apart by damaging police investigations because a child was smacked? And I think it would discredit the whole concept of domestic abuse as well as child abuse if, under this bill, we were to treat smacking as assault and do ourselves an assault on family coherence. The majority of families are joyous places of solidarity and socialising children that are sometimes messy, sometimes argumentative, sometimes a bit of shouting, sometimes the odd smack, but they are largely full of love. This amendment suggests otherwise and should be rejected.
The reasonable chastisement defence helps to ensure that good parents do not find themselves being accused of being a child abuser for doing something perfectly gentle and humane. The reasonable chastisement defence therefore exists firstly to keep children safe and secondly to protect loving, decent parents. The current law does not need amending. It achieves the right balance. Who, after all, wants to criminalize reasonable behaviour? Parents have a huge range of tactics and strategies at their disposal to help their children grow up into kind, diligent adults. Gentle instruction, words of praise, the naughty step, withdrawing privileges, but for many parents, reasonable chastisement sometimes fits the bill. Who are we to make criminals of those whose parenting philosophy differs from our own on this point? And for every person who claims such common sense parenting is damaging, we have thousands of sensible parents living in the real world who are convinced otherwise. Opinion poll after opinion poll shows that 3/4 of the public do not want to expose parents who use reasonable chastisement to the full force of the criminal law. This amendment is neither necessary nor wanted by the public. We should not use the criminal law to enforce political fashions and condemn the mums and dads of today for making the same decisions many of us have made. We must let parents decide for themselves. Common sense should not result in a criminal record.
The current legal position is clear, appropriate, and protects children from abuse and harm. The government does not accept that the law as it stands is in breach of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. We believe that it is compliant with Articles 19 and 37 in relation to abuse and violence towards children.